Our next honoree serves the 1st Congressional District of Nevada and has built a strong record of achievement as both an educator and a public servant. As a professor, she taught American and Nevada government classes at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas for 34 years until her retirement. A noted nonfiction writer, she is internationally known for her expertise in the history and policies related to nuclear power, weaponry, and waste, as well as for her knowledge of the popular lore of atomic culture. In 2008, she was elected to represent the 3rd District of Nevada in the U.S. House of Representatives. During the 111th Congress, she served on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, the Education and Labor Committee, and the Homeland Security Committee. Serving the 1st Congressional District of Nevada, please give a round of applause for Congresswoman Dina Titus.
Well, muchas gracias. Buenos días y bienvenidos al Distrito Número 1, que tengo el honor de representar en Congreso. Thank you very much. Lo siento, pero no hablo español muy bien. Un poquito, nada más. Ojalá que mejore. So that's going to be about it. Some people think I don't even speak English with a very good accent, but I very much appreciate your being here. You know, we're just delighted to welcome you all to Las Vegas, and right here in the heart of the district I represent, District 1. This is the fastest growing Hispanic population in the country, and District 1 has the largest Hispanic population in the state. So it's an honor for me to represent it and to welcome your national convention here to our district. LULAC, as you know, for 84 years has just been a leader in fighting discrimination and overcoming obstacles in the civil rights and against prejudice for all different kinds of communities based on ethnic, gender, and sexual orientation when it comes to discrimination. I want to thank you all for breaking down those barriers and commend you for the good work that you've been doing. I want to especially thank the women who are involved, because as they say, if you get the mama, you get the whole family. Cuando vota la madre, vota toda la familia. And so I know that is true. And I'd like to give a special shout out to your president, Margaret Moran, only the 3rd woman ever to lead this organization. And I know that a friend of mine who's very active on the local front, Dr. Priscilla Rocha, is here. So Priscilla, if you are there, hello, and thank you for helping me to come today. You know, it's a very exciting time in our country. Congress is finally making progress towards comprehensive immigration reform. I know you heard a lot about that from the Vice President last night. And I want you to know that I'm fighting in Washington to ensure that our priorities are included in the final bill. Now is not the time to trade portions of the bill just to bring more people on board. We need to pass a strong bill, the right bill, and not just any bill. I want you to know, thank you. When I was in the 111th Congress, I was proud to be a co-sponsor of the DREAM Act. And I've been working with Congressman Gutierrez so that we can expand that deferred action program to include the mamas and the daddies of those wonderful students as well, because we shouldn't be deporting the very people we're trying to help with comprehensive immigration reform. You know, it's also a pretty exciting time in our country for women, and I know this is a luncheon to recognize your women of distinction, and a lot is happening, but it's also challenging for women. There's a great quote by Sojourner Truth that I think kind of sums it up, if I can share it with you. She said, "If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down, then women today ought to be able to come together and set it right again. And I think that's what our challenge is. You know, I thought about this quote recently when I was sitting in a Democratic caucus meeting with our leader, Nancy Pelosi. We were talking about the Democratic agenda for the next few months in Congress, and I just looked around the room, and I was very proud to be part of a historic moment in Congress. For the first time ever, we are a minority-majority caucus. You know, it really is something we should be proud of. I was look around the room. You see the first Hindu American ever elected to the Congress, a woman, Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii. You've got Dina Edwards, who before coming to Congress from Maryland was a women's rights activist. Around the table are a number of Hispanic women, including the Sanchez sisters from California. You've got an African-American attorney from Alabama, Terry Sewell, the first Chinese-American woman, Grace Ming from New York, and you also have a Thai-American woman, a veteran who lost both legs in Iraq, Tammy Duckworth. Now that's a lot of good diversity, I gotta say. You know, we have Jewish members, Catholic members, a Muslim member, Protestants of every stripe. We have a bisexual former state legislator from Arizona, Kristen Sinema, and we've got several openly gay members. And we let a few old white guys in there too. So this really is a historic moment, and we shouldn't overlook it, because I believe this Democratic caucus represents the changing demographics in this country, the rise of women and minorities in politics, and it's a change that we should recognize, we should be proud of, and we should brag about, because this is the face of America. This is what folks look like, and this is what our Congress should look like as well. So for the first time ever, there are more members from traditional minority groups than there are Caucasian members. Let's acknowledge that with a little round of applause. You know, a big part of this change has been the rise of women in the political world, and I think that matches the theme of your conference this year, lifting our voices through civic participation. You know, since 1917, when Jeanette Rankin became the first woman in Congress from Montana, only 296 women have served in Congress. Now, that's 296 women compared to 12,000 men over time. Now, we got started a little bit later, but still, that's a big difference. Today, 20% of the people in the Senate are women, and 18% of the House are women. Now, this is the most ever, and the numbers have been growing, but you've got to remember that 51% of the American population are women. So we have to do better. We have got to recruit women. We've got to train them to be good candidates. We've got to support their candidacies and then get them elected to office, because we know that women work harder in campaigns. They bring, there must be some woman over here running for office. She knows what she's talking about. They work harder in campaigns. They bring with them a whole cadre of volunteers from the PTA or the Sunday school or the Bridge Club. They're less likely to get involved in scandals also, by the way. And when they are elected to office, they make a difference not only in policy, but also in process. So we got to get more women elected. Now, women are making progress in areas other than politics, too. We have surpassed men in some other fields. Do you know that 25% more women than men graduated from college in the most recent study? And more women are going to law school and to medical school each year. This year, women made up 48% of medical school classes. And the number's going up for minority women as well. In 2010, the women whose race and ethnicity was known, among them, 38.5% of women physicians were women of color. And women are making great strides in business. There are over 8.3 million women-owned businesses in the United States that generate $1.2 trillion and employ almost 8 million people. And that includes over 53,000 Latina-owned businesses. In fact, Latina entrepreneurs start businesses at a rate of six times the national average. Now, despite this progress, however, women, and in particular Latinas, still earn significantly less than men do, even though they work just as hard or maybe harder because they have to juggle what's happening at home with what's happening at work. Over a lifetime, the wage gap deprives women of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this is especially true for minority women. In Nevada, women are losing approximately $2.3 billion each year due to the pay gap. So that doesn't just hurt women, it hurts their families and it hurts our communities. So what can we do about this? Well, we have to fix it and close that pay gap. We started doing that in the 111th Congress. The first bill I voted for was the Lilly Ledbetter Act that took a big step towards ensuring that you could get equal pay for equal work. When we passed that bill, thank you. When we passed that bill, the president signed it, Lilly Ledbetter, Fair Pay Act. He said, "We are upholding one of this nation's first principles, that we are all created equal and each deserve a chance to pursue our version of happiness." Well, we need to take it a step further, and in this Congress, I'm a proud co-sponsor of the Paycheck Fairness Act, which will not only allow you to sue for equal pay, but will help close that gap because it will prohibit outright any gender discrimination. Thank you. There are other measures that are before Congress, too, that have a great deal of effect on women generally and women of color. We've got to remember that we have to protect the Affordable Care Act. 37 times the Republicans have tried to repeal that in the House, 37 times. Remember, before this was passed, being a woman was a pre-existing condition. We can't go back to that. That's very important for women's health. Another issue is violence against women. Like I said, the Vice President was here last night. Well, it was under his direction in 1994 that the first Violence Against Women, VAWA, Act was passed. And as a result of that, sexual violence was cut almost in half in this country over the last decade or so. Among Latinas, it was cut by 2/3. We recently reauthorized that, and we had to fight back an amendment from across the aisle that wanted to exclude, now can you imagine this, immigrant women and Native Americans. It's okay to have violence against immigrant women and Native Americans. No, it's not, and we fought against that, but we got to keep fighting and be sure that that's not rolled back. Another major issue that you're hearing a lot about is sexual assault in the military. This is a major issue. Last year, over 26,000 sexual assaults occurred in the military. That's in 1 year, 26,000. And women of color are more likely to experience harsher sexual discrimination and assault than their white counterparts. This is not something that we can tolerate in our military. There are a number of bills that are going forward to address this. We've got to get behind them and be sure that they pass so that culture that allows that kind of action to go forward can be destroyed and eliminated. So we've made some tremendous strides since Jeanette Rankin first ran for Congress. I appreciate the gains that we've made throughout history, but we've got to remember glass ceilings still exist, discrimination still exists, sexual harassment and violence still exist. In short, civil rights and women's empowerment are not static issues. We have to always refuse to say this is good enough, we've done good enough work, there's nothing that else we have to do. That's not true. We should never hesitate to speak out, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. Y'all do a wonderful job of this. We've got to mentor the next generation Those young women coming up have got to be reminded of what it took to get there and how precious those rights are and need to be protected. And we've got to support one another. Personally, call a friend who's sick. Economically, shop at a store that's run by a Latina. Politically, support a woman candidate or run for office yourself. That's got to be our calling as we go forward. So I thank you for your attention, and I'd like to kind of finish where I started with another quote from Sojourner Truth. She said, when you can hear the angry mob closing in on you, when you can feel the heat of the torches behind you, when you can sense the hounds at your heels, you have to keep going. Keep going. So I say to you, you have done a lot, but keep going. Adelante, siempre adelante. Thank you very much. Thank you.